are these people?
I don't know what
it's a war. You're going to see it.
But this is like, I'm sorry, like this is like reaping what you sow. Like if you can freaking like, squint your eyes and you can make out freaking the walls of Gaza in the distance, and you think that it's like you have a clear conscience at a rave at the same time, like, you're missing some brain cells. So,
Yeah,
in a way, this is kind of like, natural selection kind of working itself out.
I mean, this is more, and it's like kind of like why I mentioned earlier that like Max Blumenthal, like he was not surprised at all, and you shouldn't be surprised because this is like it literally is like a boiling.
I mean, what are you going to do if you're born in a prison and you expect to spend your whole life in that prison and you witness like multiple airstrikes coming down all the time in your homeland? Like eventually you're going to get radicalized.
There's a lot of these people, they're at their last whims. They have no hope. They protested several times. Every time they protest, they just get shot by snipers.
They get shot. Yeah. They
just get shot in the head.
Summarily executed.
So there's no to get out of this. It's really just like a slow genocide. It's been a slow purpose of genocide. So let's listen why there can't be peace. And the thing is that violence, when it's not necessary when you can label it terrorism, but what this is called resistance. This isn't a terrorism in my view.
I don't like
it would be a purposeful, intentional, malicious act against like a population or like a certain large segment of people, deliberately under like a certain pretext, right?
Yeah, and also I feel like when
they just want water and electricity. That's all. That's literally like half of the things that they want.
I know.
Most of the things that they want is just basic human rights. That's it.
Sovereignty.
Food, water, shelter. That's it.
Why won't your organization engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks. You mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, if there were no swords and no guns in the room, you could still talk.
No, I had never seen any talk between a colonialist case and a national liberation movement.
But despite this, why not talk?
Do it anyway.
Talk about what?
Talk about the possibility of not fighting.
Not fighting for what?
Not fighting at all, no matter what for.
Yeah, and people usually fight for something and they stop fighting for something. So you can't tell me even why should we speak about what?
Well, stop fighting.
For what? Or talk about stop fighting, why?
Talk to stop fighting, to stop the death and the misery, the destruction, the pain.
The misery and the destruction and the pain and the death of whom?
Of Palestinians, of Israelis, of Arabs.
Of the Palestinian people who are uprooted, thrown in the camps, living in starvation, killed for 20 years, and forbidden to use even the name Palestinians.
They're better that way than dead, though.
Maybe to you, but to us, it's not.
Yeah.
To us, to liberate our country, to have dignity, to have respect, to have our mere human rights, is something as essential as life itself.
People are making good comments about how the interviewer is like completely out to lunch on understanding the nature of it, and that's a combination of probably being willfully ignorant and it's kind of like what Chomsky was saying, like with that old BBC interview where he like told the interviewer, he's like, listen, like no one thinks that you're lying or peddling an agenda, but you wouldn't be in the position that you're in if not for having the views that you have, So Zionists are going to get the position to interview people and not have a clue about what the fuck's going on or what a liberation movement looks like, because that's their indoctrination. That's what they're grown up believing. Because I think it's like a good time to kind of lay out why it's okay for Hamas and the Palestinians to be doing what they're doing. Ben Norton came out with this video like right after the conflict started. Yeah, Desert Man just knows. But he came out with a video right after this started. And he does an excellent job driving home some points that I want to bring up. Like, I recommend watching the whole thing because it's excellent and he nails every single point. But, for the sake of what we're doing right now, I just want to touch upon some couple really important points that Ben goes into. So, mainly that the UN, expressly allows and permits armed rebellion against an occupier. Okay, and that the conflict has a political nature and not a religious nature to it. So I guess we could start from 135.
The evidence today from mainstream sources showing this.
And I also want
to play from the beginning from 135. Sorry.
We're fully aware of the money, the thief that
I'm not.
We're not going to get involved in that drama.
I'm not trying to get involved in that drama, and to be.
Honestly, I like this channel.
The only thing I'm going to say to that is that what you guys are being told about the money is only one side of the story, and if you guys care about being informed, huh?
They got receipts. I'm not subbing that. I'm not high fiving that.
I mean,
I believe Max has good stuff on him.
That's why he didn't get the money. That's why he didn't get the money.
I think he's informative.
I think they're both informative, and I think that we shouldn't let
This is a good video. Okay,
their personal stuff.
Well, despite his personality, this is like listening to Kanye West. Okay.
In response to the attacks in Israel-Palestine, I wanted to make a report that provides important context that is almost never mentioned in the mainstream corporate media, and yet we cannot understand this conflict without these basic facts. First of all, in Gaza, there are 2.3 million Palestinians living under an illegal Israeli blockade. Israel controls everything that enters and leaves Gaza. This is an open-air prison. Even the former British Prime Minister referred to this as an open-air prison. This has gone on for 16 years, and it's completely illegal. Secondly, according to international law, Palestinians have a legal right to armed resistance. Today, I'm going to look through the letter of the law. I'm going to look at United Nations resolutions that show clearly that Palestinians have a right to armed resistance against Israeli colonialism. And three, Israel is a colonial apartheid regime. It used to be controversial to say this, but it no longer is. Even mainstream Western human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and UN bodies have acknowledged that Israel is committing a crime against humanity by carrying out a system of apartheid against the Palestinian people. These are all very important facts. I'm going to go through the evidence today from mainstream sources showing this.
You go to
and yet,
229.
this context is almost...
Yeah.
But here are the basic facts that you should know. First of all, the conflict in Israel-Palestine is not about religion. A lot of Western analysts try to portray this as a religious conflict between Muslims and Jews. First of all, there are many Palestinian Christians as well. It's not religious, but this is a lazy analysis. In reality, this is a conflict about national liberation and self-determination. This is also similar to the very lazy and misleading analysis that blames the violence in Northern Ireland on religion. It's not a religious conflict. It's a conflict about colonialism, of Irish nationalists resisting British colonialism so they can unify Ireland, which is partially occupied by British colonialism. It's not a conflict between Catholics and Protestants. Now, because this is a struggle of national liberation.
I just wanted to touch upon that because we were mentioning earlier that all Israel is a bunch of white European colonists. That's kind of what Ben's saying here is it's not a religious conflict.
You already mentioned this before. Israel's not even they're not Israelites. Palestine was a country before.
Well, no, and the other thing is that because Israel is trying to create an ethno-state, they let people who I don't know what the bar is for proving how much Ashkenazi or Jewish blood you have on you, but they're trying to get their numbers up to create an ethno-state so they can say that they're a Jewish state. So they let as many people in as possible, and that's kind of how the settler thing works. So we can go from 6 minutes now. Part about the UNICEF.
Yeah.
Of Gaza. In 2022, UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, published a report on the humanitarian impact of 15 years of the Israeli blockade of the Gaza Strip. And there are a lot of very inconvenient facts in here that I want to go through because, again, they're almost never mentioned in the mainstream corporate media. UNICEF notes that the Israeli blockade was imposed on Gaza in 2007. So now it has been 16 years of a blockade. And this is not just a land blockade. It is also a sea blockade and an air blockade. Israel controls everything that goes in and out of the territory. Gaza has no sovereignty. As UNICEF puts it, Israel has significantly exacerbated previous restrictions, limiting the number and specified categories of people and goods allowed in and out through the Israeli-controlled crossings. Israeli forces have largely restricted access to areas within 300 meters of the Gaza side of the perimeter fence with Israel. So they've surrounded Gaza with a massive fence. And whenever Palestinians protest inside Gaza, Israeli snipers shoot them, including not only peaceful protesters, but also medics.
Yeah, which is all a war crime. Killing children is a war crime. This is all according to the UN.
So go back to about 710, because instead of like listening to all of them go over all the other points, we can just like look at it. So Israeli forces have largely restricted access to the area within 300 meters of the Gaza side of the perimeter fence of Israel. Israeli forces restrict access off the Gaza coast, currently only allowing fishermen access to 50% of the fishing waters. Unemployment levels in Gaza are among the highest in the world. The Q1 jobless rate was 46.6% compared with an average of 34.8% in 2006. Youth unemployment is at 62.5%. 1.3 million out of 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza, that's over half, 62%, require food assistance. And 50% of the electricity demand in Gaza, so they only get power about half the day. And
4 hours.
Yeah, it's 4 hours a day now, so it's even less now. And about 4/5 of the water.
That's in 2019. I don't know. I don't know about now.
It's probably worse.
Now they don't have any.
Yeah.
Well, right now they don't have any.
Yeah, I think they completely shut it off now. So
they completely shut it off.
Yeah, and the last point, 4/5 of the water that comes to their pipes is unfit for consumption. So just incredible oppression that they're going through on a daily basis. You know, and maybe people aren't like aware, like maybe they just think it's like people who aren't paying attention just think it's a resort. Or maybe if you're born Palestinian, you deserve to be like oppressed like that for a lifetime. But, you know, with the people who want to toe the line and say that this stuff is unprovoked, they're coming from a place where they don't know these things, or they don't think more than 30 seconds.
Or even both sidesing it. Even both sidesing it is not enough. If you're anti-war, you are 100% supporting the Palestinian resistance, and that's it.
Regions of the world, and yet they're treated like cattle. They're not treated like human beings. In fact, documents from Israel's defense ministry prove that Israel controlled the amount of food that can be imported into Gaza in order to, quote, put Palestinians on a diet, to control their access to food. This was reported on a decade ago in the Guardian newspaper, and they say very clearly, this is, you know, the establishment British mouthpiece, they say, quote, the Israeli military made precise calculations of Gaza's daily calorie needs, according to files the defense ministry released. Israel also maintained a list of foods that were permitted and banned from Gaza. Israel calculated the calorie needs for Gaza's population so as to restrict the quantity of food it allowed in. And a diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks, which is why the journalist Julian Assange is in prison and is facing life in prison. WikiLeaks published a U.S. diplomatic cable that showed, it quoted Israeli diplomats as saying they wanted to, quote, keep Gaza's economy on the brink of collapse. And a human rights organization inside Israel called Gisha said, quote, the official goal of the policy was to wage economic warfare, which would paralyze Gaza's economy. And as an example of the restrictions that Israel imposes, it prevents Palestinians from importing things like coriander and instant coffee. I mean, preventing them from having a basic, dignified life.
But and on top of that, they're not, you know, I know he's just talking about food here, but one of the other things that they aren't allowed to import is concrete. So they can't rebuild any of the structures that get carpet bombed by IDF. So that's why everything's in rubble, is because the IDF doesn't allow them to rebuild. So the next part at like about 11:30, this is kind of like the legality of the whole situation that I kind of want to make clear, because this is why I think that there's not really, once you kind of understand what's going on, there's no nuance to this. There's no both sidesing. You know, Palestine has every right to defend itself, and the UN says so.
This is why it is absolutely correct to say that Palestinians in Gaza are living in an open-air prison camp, and because of that, according to international law, they have a legal right to armed resistance. This is spelled out very clearly by the United Nations. There is no ambiguity. And this was stated very clearly in a United Nations General Assembly resolution from 1980, which is resolution 35/35. The resolution, quote, reaffirms the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial and foreign domination and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle.
That's it.
That's the UN. That's the UN.
That's it.
And they even say Palestine by name. And this is back in the 80s when there was actual apartheid in South Africa. So, you know, this goes back. It's not like just last week. Like they've been very, very clear on this issue going on almost 50 years.
Yeah. There's no nuance on this. Absolutely not.
So we got the part about amnesty, but you saw that earlier. I think we can probably just skip to where he talks a little bit about the unprovoked part. But you can see Amnesty International called it an apartheid state. So there's really no nuance here. Again, like you'll run into RFK. RFK is an apartheid denier, but even Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, they all call it.
These
apartheid.
are the most basic. Like these are the same people that are like accusing like Russia of war crimes. Like these are the most like liberal like.
Well, so I was actually thinking about this the other day. So the people there's a Venn diagram, okay, and the people who support Ukrainian Nazis and the people who deny that apartheid exists in Palestine, it's a circle. It's just one circle. You know, it's the same people, which is kind of telling, I think. In a way, the people. No, lol, that's Chris. What is this? I don't know what you were responding to.
No, he's asked me because I'm in Ben Dorn's echo chamber.
Hey, I watch Gray Zone too, but like I don't think there's an echo chamber here. He's using information.
There's no discrimination here. It's just good.
Dude, he's citing everything. This isn't an opinion. This is just citing freaking.
It's just easy because it's right there. It's all compiled.
So uncontroversial at this point that now even mainstream human rights organizations like Amnesty International published a report in 2022 in which it states, quote, Israeli authorities must be held accountable for committing the crime of apartheid against Palestinians. Israel enforces a system of oppression and domination against the Palestinian people. This includes Palestinians living in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, as well as displaced refugees in other countries. Amnesty published a lengthy report that details massive seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians, which are all components of a system which amounts to apartheid under international law and constitutes a crime against humanity. And Amnesty International called on the International Criminal Court to consider the crime of apartheid in its investigation in the occupied Palestinian territories. Although I should point out that's not going to happen because the ICC, after pressure by Western governments and by Israel, replaced its chief prosecutor with a British prosecutor who immediately dropped the investigations into Israeli atrocities and war crimes in the occupied Palestinian territories. He also stopped the ICC's investigation into war crimes committed by the U.S. military in Afghanistan. So that's the biased International Criminal Court for you. But the point is that it's become so uncontroversial that Israel is an apartheid regime that even the former chief of Mossad, which is the top Israeli intelligence agency, spy agency, which assassinates Palestinians. I mean, this is an organization that has so much Palestinian blood on its hands. Well, the former chief of Mossad also admitted that Israel is carrying out an apartheid regime. This is according to an interview published in September by the Associated Press. And it notes, a former head of Israel's Mossad intelligence agency told the Associated Press that Israel is enforcing an apartheid system in the West Bank. This is incredible because I remember a decade ago as a journalist constantly being smeared, demonized, lied about because
This is what RFK is saying.
Mhm.
He's saying it's not apartheid.
Yeah, just completely denying
The
it.
Mossad says it's apartheid.
Even Mossad, you can actually skip to. I guess you could just wrap it up with the about 2407 because he talks about the unprovoked narrative too.
But of course, the U.S. government ignores international law, and the Joe Biden White House released a ridiculous statement referring to the attacks by Palestinian forces against Israel as, quote, unprovoked. By definition, they are not unprovoked. I mean, there's no mention of the millions of Palestinian refugees, the destruction of their houses, the bulldozing of their houses, the blockade of Gaza, the occupation of the West Bank, the borderline starvation diet that Palestinians are put on, the destruction of farmland so Palestinians cannot feed themselves and their families, the humiliation, the racism, the apartheid. By definition, this is the opposite of unprovoked. These are very much provoked attacks. Israel is constantly provoking these attacks, and every single day, Israel kills Palestinians every day. This violence in Israel-Palestine is not new. Only saying that there's violence when Palestinians respond to the Israeli violence is completely misleading. You don't actually care about the violence if you only talk about the violence when Palestinians respond to the constant daily, hourly Israeli violence.
Probably good for there, but Yeah, so, and it's funny because that statement actually looks a lot, now that I'm looking at it again after seeing RFK's statement, the unequivocal condemnation, whatever. It sounds like RFK looked at that announcement and was like, oh, I'll just change some words around, you know?
These people are on their last wins. Imagine, like, no one can ever possibly imagine a situation like that. I will, you know, I was earlier on sort of not sure if I should play this video because of violence, but I'll play it anyway.
Which one is
but
it?
This is, but you want to know like the mentality of the Israeli snipers. We have this video from the Max Blumenthal documentary.
Oh, I remember this. Yeah,
this is the kind of people that we're dealing with.
this is from March of Return, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the 2018-2019 March of Return.
וואי, זה סרטון! יש! בן של זונה.
Disgusting.
איזה סרטון, הנה, תרוץ ולפנות אותו. בטח שצילמתי את זה.
Oh my god.
וואו, פגעו לי מישהו בראש.
Oh my god, dude.
איזה סרטון אגדה.
Psychopaths.
So we're at the point where they've gotten all of the mainstream press, but without any of the praise, any of the support, any of the help. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're cutting off all of the EU's cutting off aid to Israel, to Palestine.
Of course they are. That's their virtue signal of standing behind Israel and letting like Palestinians starve. Okay, it's like it's just wild. Like people so obviously on the wrong side of history on this one, and it's like a whole mask off moment for the world to see. And
nobody gives a fuck. Nobody gives a single fuck about any of them. So what are they going to do? What else are they? You tell me what they're going to do. Because
wow,
clearly like they're helpless and they don't have any sort of they don't. No one else is going to save them.
Well, I mean,
you want them to just sit there and die? Like,
I mean, that's why I got kind of It was good to see how fast. Like Lebanon showed support, Taliban of all groups showed support, freaking Iran showed support. So like you're starting to see, I think what you're seeing here is that yes, it's fair to say that this was planned a long time ago, and that all these other countries that are showing support for Hamas have planned on showing support for Hamas for a long time since before this started. That being said, and I'm kind of losing my train of thought. I think this conflict is the hill that a lot of these countries are willing to die on. You know, I think this conflict is the one that's like, okay, we can finally get that pest known as Israel out of the fucking Middle East. So, like, I think that this is going to be an existential thing for either Israel or Palestine, one or the other. You know, like
it's a huge shift.
Yeah, I don't think we've already been way past the like farce that was the opportunity for a two-state solution. I think this conflict is going to end with either Palestine or Israel. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm coming from with it.
We know that it's very bleak, it's very dark. There's no way out. If there's no water, there's no way out of Gaza. What should we do? Like, drown? Like, commit mass suicide? Is this what Israel wants? And we're not going to do that. And I was telling some friend the other day that I'm an academic. Probably the toughest thing I have at home is an expo marker. But if the Israelis invade, if they charge at us, open door to door to massacre us, I'm going to use that marker, throw it at the Israeli soldiers, even if that is the last thing that I would be able to do. And this is the feeling of everybody. We are helpless. We have nothing to lose.
Jeez. Was that literally a freaking like bomb that dropped as he's on the live stream? That's crazy. Yeah, dude. Sounds like there was a freaking explosion. Wow, that's crazy. That's chilling.
Well, he's from Gaza, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That being said, it's going to be really ugly when they do.
I'm going to retweet that for prosperity too, just because that's a powerful video. a powerful aspect.
I would agree with that.
We have a lot of the.
It's going to be really sad when they cross into Gaza because there is going to be a lot of. I think that there's going to be a lot of like innocent people caught in the crossfire, but in the end, I think that IDF would lose a confrontation in Gaza because it's in Hamas's backyard. They've got the tunnels, they've got the infrastructure. You know, it's their playground.